Massive earthworks loom across silent landscapes, built by people whose names we will never know. This video explores the profound mystery of civilizations that left no written records or personal identities behind. You will discover how entire societies achieved greatness without a single named ruler, forever changing how you see human history. Why would a culture choose to remain anonymous? And what can their silent monuments teach us about our own need for legacy? What does it truly mean for a civilization to be remembered? An archaeologist gently holds a pot, its surface etched with intricate patterns. They can feel the skill in its making, the careful attention of its creator, yet the name of that person is lost forever. This is the profound silence we encounter with anonymous civilizations. Across the world, societies flourished without leaving behind a single written word or personal inscription. They built cities, engineered landscapes, and created stunning art, all without a single named ruler or artist claiming credit. The absence is not an accident of time, it is a feature of their world. Why would a culture choose to remain nameless? For many, the concept of individual legacy was overshadowed by the collective. Identity was woven into the community, into the clan or the family line, not carved onto monuments for a solitary person. The renowned archaeologist Brian Fagan notes that this anonymity forces us, as modern observers, to shift our perspective. We cannot tell the story of a great king, so we must learn to read the story of the people. We must look at the grand scale of their achievements, the shared labor of earthworks, the common styles of pottery found across a region. This presents a unique challenge for researchers. How do you reconstruct a history without a cast of characters? The answer lies in the silent language of material culture. Archaeologists become detectives of the everyday. They map settlement patterns to understand social structure. They analyze the distribution of tools and goods to trace trade routes and economic systems. They compare burial practices across sites to glimpse beliefs about the world beyond. A single potsherd is not just a broken piece of clay, it is a fragment of a story, a clue to the values, the technologies, and the daily rhythms of an entire people. By focusing on what they left behind rather than who they were as individuals, we begin to hear the quiet, collective voice of a civilization. This foundational shift in understanding, from the individual to the community, prepares us to journey to the places where these silent echoes are the loudest. The sun crests the massive earthen terraces of Monk's Mound, a silent pyramid built by hands we can never name. This was the heart of Cahokia, a bustling city that thrived for centuries. From roughly 800 to 1600 CE, the Mississippian culture transformed the eastern woodlands. Their world was one of carefully planned cities, where wide plazas were flanked by enormous, flat-topped mounds. These were not simple piles of dirt. They were foundational structures for the most important buildings in the community, places of ceremony, and the homes of revered leaders. At major centers like Cahokia, Moundville, and Etowah, you can still feel the echoes of a sophisticated society. Thousands of people lived in these urban hubs, connected by complex trade routes that stretched for hundreds of miles. Their social structure was clearly defined, with skilled artisans, farmers, and a ruling class living in a carefully organized landscape. The artifacts they left behind speak of a rich spiritual life. Elaborate shell gorgets, intricately carved with swirling patterns, and repoussé copper plates depicting otherworldly figures like the birdman, tell us stories of their beliefs. Yet the chief who commissioned such a piece, or the artist who carved it, remains utterly anonymous. Their identity was entirely absorbed by their community and their culture. The end of this great civilization is one of history's quiet mysteries. Researchers suggest that a combination of environmental shifts and internal social challenges may have led to their dispersal. The cities were gradually abandoned and the forests reclaimed the plazas. What remains is a landscape of gentle, grass-covered mounds, monumental questions posed in soil and stone. They achieved staggering grandeur without a single personal signature, a testament to the power of the collective. This pattern of anonymous building extends far beyond North America, appearing in the most unexpected of places. A vast cultural web once connected distant river valleys, a network of shared ideas that stretched from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico. This was the world of the Hopewell people, a civilization not of emperors and armies, but of ceremony and exchange. From roughly 200 years before the Common Era to 500 years into it, communities across the Midwestern United States participated in a remarkable interaction sphere. They were not a single, unified state, but a constellation of societies bound by common rituals and a far-reaching trade network. Their most enduring legacies are the earthworks they left behind, breathtaking in their complexity and precision. Enormous geometric enclosures, perfect circles and sprawling octagons, were carved into the landscape alongside towering burial mounds. Constructing these required not only immense communal effort, but also a sophisticated understanding of astronomy, as many earthworks align with the cycles of the sun and moon. Within these sacred spaces, people gathered from great distances, bringing materials that tell a story of continent-wide connections. In a single Hopewell burial mound, you might find obsidian from the distant Yellowstone region, shimmering sheets of mica from the Appalachian Mountains, and beautifully worked copper from the shores of Lake Superior. These were not mere commodities, they were gifts for the honored, materials transformed into ritual objects that cemented social and spiritual bonds. The individuals who organized these gatherings, the artisans who shaped the copper, and the travelers who carried goods for hundreds of miles remain completely anonymous. Their society appears to have been organized around collective ceremonial life, perhaps guided by spiritual leaders rather than a permanent ruling class. The absence of palatial homes or fortified centers suggests a more egalitarian structure, where identity was rooted in participation within this great cultural network. Then, around the middle of the first millennium, the flow of exotic goods slowed, the great earthworks were no longer expanded, and the vibrant connections faded. The reasons are still debated, with shifts in climate patterns or changes in social organization being leading theories. The Hopewell tradition did not so much collapse as it gradually dissipated, its people blending into new cultural tapestries. Their legacy is a powerful reminder that a civilization's influence is not always measured in territorial conquest, but sometimes in the quiet, far-reaching echoes of shared belief. This pattern of anonymous collective building reaches back even further in time to the very first mound-building cultures of North America. Long before the great geometric enclosures of the Hopewell, the first mounds began to rise. In the fertile valleys of the Ohio River, a people now known as the Adena started a tradition that would echo for millennia, beginning around 1,000 years before the Common Era. Their world was one of forests and rivers, and their most enduring mark upon it was the burial mound. These were not the massive platform mounds of later cities, but often conical earthworks, carefully constructed over the final resting places of important individuals. Within these mounds, archaeologists have found log-lined tombs, a clear sign of reverence and care for the departed. The objects placed with them speak volumes about a society where status and belief were beginning to take tangible form. Exquisitely carved stone pipes, some in the shapes of animals and birds, suggest ritual practices. Beads made from native copper and sheets of mica, materials gathered from distant sources, hint at both emerging social differentiation and far-flung trade connections. Yet the person who used that pipe, or the leader who warranted such a burial, is known to us only as a collection of bones and artifacts. Their name, their personal story, is inseparable from the community that honored them. The Adena were not just building mounds, they were engineering a new relationship with the landscape and the cosmos. Their earthworks, often arranged in circular patterns, demonstrate an early awareness of astronomical cycles. This growing mastery of landscape engineering and symbolic expression provided a direct cultural foundation for what was to come. The transition from the Adena to the Hopewell is not a story of conquest and replacement, but one of evolution and influence. Ideas about ceremony, burial, and earthwork construction were refined and expanded, passed down through generations without a single written word. The Hopewell did not appear from a vacuum, they stood on the shoulders of the anonymous Adena builders. This deep historical perspective reveals a fundamental truth about cultural development. Lasting change often happens as a slow, collective current, where innovations are adopted, adapted, and transmitted across centuries. The same patterns of anonymous legacy that we find in the ancient woodlands of North America also appear across the ocean, where other cultures left behind monumental puzzles without a single name to claim them. Across the Atlantic, on the windswept plains and rolling hills of prehistoric Europe, a similar story of anonymous achievement was being written in stone. From roughly 4,500 to 2,000 years before the Common Era, Neolithic farming communities embarked on one of humanity's most enduring architectural endeavors. They erected standing stones that stretch for kilometers in Carnac, France, and built the immense passage tomb of Newgrange in Ireland, a structure older than the pyramids of Giza. Their most famous work, the Sarsen Circle of Stonehenge in England, was assembled with a precision that continues to baffle engineers today. These were not the projects of a simple, scattered people, but of organized societies with a shared, powerful vision. We walk among these stones and tombs completely unaware of the master planners who designed them, the leaders who inspired the labor, or the individual hands that hauled and placed each multi-ton slab. Their personal identities are entirely lost, subsumed by the sheer weight of their collective effort. The scale of these undertakings reveals a complex social fabric. To move a single 80-ton stone for Stonehenge from its quarry over 20 miles away would have required the coordinated labor of hundreds of people for many months. This suggests communities capable of long-term planning, resource management, and a social structure that could mobilize and sustain a large workforce, all while ensuring the community was still fed and sheltered. The purpose behind this immense investment of time and energy appears deeply rooted in their worldview. The precise alignment of Newgrange so that the winter solstice sunrise illuminates its inner chamber, or the way the heel stone at Stonehenge frames the summer solstice sun, speaks of a profound connection to the cosmos. These were not just monuments, they were celestial calendars and likely centers for rituals that tied the community to the cycles of nature, the seasons, and the spirits of their ancestors. The enduring mystery is why. Why did cultures separated by an ocean, from the mound builders of North America to the megalith builders of Europe, all choose to invest so heavily in collective monuments that bear no individual names? The parallel is striking. Both types of societies demonstrate that you do not need a named pharaoh or emperor to achieve architectural grandeur. You need a shared belief system powerful enough to unite a community for generations. The legacy of the megalith builders is a powerful, silent testament to the human impulse to reach for the heavens, to honor the earth, and to build something that would outlast them all, even if their own names were forgotten by time. This global pattern of anonymity forces us to look even deeper, to a civilization that perfected the art of leaving no trace at all. The streets of Mohenjo-Daro were laid out in a perfect grid, a marvel of urban planning in a world without kings. From approximately 3,300 to 1,300 years before the Common Era, the Indus Valley Civilization flourished across a vast region, building cities of stunning sophistication that completely defy our traditional expectations. At sites like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, archaeologists uncovered not the palaces of mighty pharaohs or the grand tombs of warrior kings, but something perhaps more revolutionary, a society built on standardization and collective well-being. Every brick across hundreds of miles conformed to a precise ratio. Elaborate, covered drainage systems ran beneath the streets, a public health investment that speaks volumes about their communal priorities. Where we would expect to find a central citadel or a royal quarter, we find instead a great bath, a large, waterproofed public tank that may have served ritual purposes for the entire community. The most profound mystery lies in what is absent. There are no monumental statues glorifying a ruler, no grand inscriptions listing the conquests of a named emperor. The few human-like figurines we have, such as the so-called priest-king, are rare, and his title is purely a modern guess. We have no idea who he was or what power he truly held. This absence of central icons forces a radical question: how did they manage it? How did a civilization spanning over 1 million square kilometers maintain order, regulate trade, and build such uniform cities without a single, named authority figure we can identify? The answer may lie in the artifacts of everyday commerce. They used standardized stone weights for trade, a system so consistent it suggests a powerful, widely accepted form of economic regulation. Their unique script, found on thousands of small stone seals, remains undeciphered, a locked door to their language and thought. Perhaps their governance was not top-down but distributed, a form of collective administration led by merchant guilds or elder councils. Their power was not etched in stone to celebrate an individual, but woven into the very fabric of their cities, in the straight streets and the clean water. Their eventual decline is as enigmatic as their social structure. Researchers suggest that a shifting climate and the migration of river systems, the very lifelines of their agriculture, may have gradually made their urban centers unsustainable. People did not vanish but slowly dispersed. Their grand cities were carefully abandoned and left to the sands. The Indus Valley Civilization presents us with a powerful alternative blueprint for human society. It challenges the ingrained idea that complexity requires a dictator, a king, or an emperor whose name echoes through time. They achieved greatness not in the name of a person, but in the service of the community, leaving behind a legacy of quiet brilliance that continues to puzzle and inspire. This model of a society without a face asks us to look beyond the cult of the individual and consider the enduring strength of the collective, a theme that finds a startling echo in a much later civilization across the globe. The vibrant, sun-drenched courtyards of Knossos were once alive with a culture that celebrated the sea and the natural world. On the island of Crete, the Minoan Civilization created a society of astonishing sophistication from roughly 3,500 to 1,100 years before the Common Era. Their multi-story palaces, with their intricate layouts and advanced plumbing, were not fortified citadels designed for war, but seem to have been vibrant administrative and ceremonial centers. The famous legend of the labyrinth, a maze built to contain the mythical Minotaur, may be a later Greek memory of this complex architecture, a place so bewildering that it became the stuff of myth. Yet, the name of the architect who designed it, or the ruler who commissioned it, is a complete mystery to us. We walk through the reconstructed ruins and see only the ghost of a people who left no personal signatures behind. Their story is told not in chronicles but in the art that adorned their walls. Frescoes leap to life with leaping dolphins, graceful antelopes, and processions of figures with serene, almost modern expressions. This art is strikingly devoid of the martial glory so common in other ancient cultures. Instead, it pulses with a reverence for nature, for ritual, and for community life. We see depictions of bull leaping, a breathtakingly dangerous acrobatic ceremony that may have held deep spiritual meaning, but the names of the acrobats, the priests, or the rulers who watched are forever silent. Their economic and administrative records were kept in a script we call Linear A, a writing system that covered clay tablets with its unique symbols. Unlike the later Linear B used by the Mycenaean Greeks, which we can read, Linear A has stubbornly resisted all attempts at translation. It is a locked door. Behind it lies their language, their names, their thoughts on trade and tribute, and the very sound of their world. We have the lists of goods, but we cannot hear the voice of the merchant who listed them. Later Greek myths of King Minos and the Minotaur are just that, myths. They are distorted reflections seen through a different cultural lens, giving us archetypes but no actual history. The Minoan world appears to have been one of remarkable peace and prosperity, a thalassocracy, a sea empire built on trade rather than conquest. Their ships connected Crete with Egypt, Anatolia, and the Greek mainland, exchanging olives, wine, and exquisite pottery for luxury goods and ideas. This vast network was managed by people whose identities are entirely subsumed by their collective cultural achievement. Then, around the middle of the second millennium before the Common Era, their world began to falter. A cataclysmic volcanic eruption on the nearby island of Thera, modern Santorini, likely triggered tsunamis and widespread ash fall, crippling their maritime economy and damaging their infrastructure. This natural disaster, followed by the growing influence and eventual dominance of the more warlike Mycenaeans from the mainland, led to the absorption of Minoan culture. The palaces were finally abandoned, and the unique character of their civilization faded into history. The Minoans stand as a poignant example of how a vibrant, advanced culture can be remembered more for the puzzles it leaves behind than for the individuals who built it. Their legacy is one of graceful art, ingenious architecture, and a silent script, a powerful reminder that a civilization's true echo is not always in the names of its kings, but in the enduring beauty of what it created together. A massive, C-shaped complex of earthworks curves across the Louisiana landscape, a design so vast it can only be fully appreciated from the air. This is Poverty Point, a monument built by a society of hunter-gatherers over 3,000 years ago. From roughly 1700 to 1100 years before the Common Era, these people achieved something that defies easy categorization. They were not farmers living in a settled village, yet they moved an estimated 1 million cubic meters of soil to create concentric, semicircular ridges, towering platform mounds, and a central plaza large enough to hold thousands. They did this without the wheel, without domesticated animals to haul loads, and without any form of written communication to coordinate their efforts. Each basket of earth was carried by hand, a testament to a shared purpose that united a community for generations. The layout itself reveals a deep, intentional connection to the cosmos. Key mounds and earthworks are aligned with the solstice sun, turning the entire site into a colossal calendar and a sacred space, engineered with a precision that speaks of carefully preserved knowledge. The objects left behind tell a story of far-reaching connections. Stone tools were fashioned from materials sourced hundreds of miles away from the Ouachita Mountains and even the Great Lakes region. Small, baked clay figurines, often depicting stylized women, show a specialization in craft and suggest shared ritual practices. Yet, the leader who envisioned this grand plan, the engineer who calculated the alignments, and the countless individuals whose labor built it remain utterly anonymous. Their identity is fused entirely with the earth they shaped. How did a society without agriculture, without the surplus food we often associate with large-scale projects, organize such a monumental undertaking? This is the central puzzle of Poverty Point. Some researchers propose it was a seasonal gathering place, a kind of ancient pilgrimage center where dispersed bands would meet at certain times of the year to trade, celebrate ceremonies, and contribute to the ongoing construction. Others see evidence of a more centralized social structure, perhaps a charismatic leadership that could inspire and direct such a colossal labor force. The truth may lie somewhere in between, a unique social model that has left no clear modern parallel. Then, after 6 centuries of activity, the site was abandoned. The culture that created it did not collapse in a dramatic fashion. It simply faded, and no similar complex was built again in the region. The reasons are lost to time, perhaps tied to shifts in river courses or changes in the availability of key resources. Poverty Point stands as a powerful challenge to our assumptions. It proves that monumentality does not require kingship, agriculture, or permanent cities. A society of hunter-gatherers living in a dynamic balance with their environment could conceive and execute one of the largest earthworks in all of ancient North America. Their legacy is not a list of rulers or a written history, but a silent, sprawling question mark etched into the soil, urging us to expand our understanding of what human communities are capable of achieving together. This rethinking of social complexity invites us to look at other enigmatic sites where the absence of names is matched only by the grandeur of the architecture. A continent of ice and new horizons lay before them, a world being shaped by retreating glaciers. At the end of the last ice age, small, highly mobile bands of people moved through landscapes untouched by human hands. These were the Paleo-Indian Pioneers, the very first inhabitants of the Americas, and their legacy is one of supreme skill and absolute anonymity. We know them by the names archaeologists have given their distinctive toolkits, Clovis and Folsom. Cultures defined not by written records but by the silent, eloquent evidence of stone. The Clovis people, flourishing around 13,000 years ago, left behind their signature across North America. Their most famous innovation was a beautifully crafted projectile point, fluted at the base to fit securely onto a spear shaft. Finding one of these points in direct association with the bones of an extinct mammoth is a powerful moment of discovery. It tells a story of incredible courage and sophisticated hunting strategy, where coordinated groups would have taken down massive, dangerous prey. The slightly later Folsom culture refined this technology, creating even more delicate and precisely fluted points, often found with the remains of an extinct species of giant bison. These were not crude tools, they were the product of generations of accumulated knowledge, a complex tradition of stone knapping passed from one person to the next without a single named master artisan. Their entire world is reconstructed from these scattered campsites and kill locations. We see evidence of their adaptation to a changing planet as the great ice sheets receded and new environments emerged. They were not just big game hunters, but flexible foragers who understood the resources of a vast and varied continent. Their social units were likely small, family-based bands, moving frequently to follow game and seasons. We have no trace of their language, no stories of their heroes or their gods, no names for the individual who crafted a perfect Folsom point or the hunter who wielded it. Their identity was entirely collective, bound to the survival of the group and the knowledge required to thrive in a new world. The transition from the widespread Clovis culture to the more regional Folsom traditions, and then to an even greater diversity of later archaeological cultures, illustrates a fundamental process of human history. As populations grew and spread, they adapted to specific environments, developing unique tools and ways of life. The anonymous legacy of these first peoples set a profound precedent. For thousands of years, deep prehistory was the norm, not the exception. The story of humanity was written in stone and bone, in shared technologies and communal survival, long before the concept of a personal name etched into history ever emerged. These pioneering cultures remind us that our deepest roots are collective, a foundation built by countless unknown hands facing a new world together. High on a sun-baked cliff face, an entire city seems to grow from the rock itself. These are the breathtaking cliff dwellings of Mesa Verde, the handiwork of the Ancestral Puebloans, a people who mastered a harsh and beautiful land. From roughly 500 to 1300 years of the Common Era, They cultivated corn, beans, and squash in the arid southwest, building communities of stunning complexity without ever inscribing a single leader's name for posterity. Their world was one of collective living and profound architectural genius. They constructed multi-story pueblos, intricate apartment-like complexes of stone and adobe that housed entire communities. Central to their social and spiritual life were the kivas, circular, subterranean rooms entered through a hole in the roof. These were sacred spaces used for ceremonies, political meetings, and community gatherings, their very design emphasizing a worldview that looked inward toward the earth and the community, rather than upward toward a singular ruler. To survive in this dry environment, they engineered sophisticated water management systems, channeling precious rainfall through carefully placed stones and reservoirs. Their material culture speaks of a rich inner world. Pottery was decorated with elegant black on white geometric patterns, and rock art panels were pecked into canyon walls, depicting spirals, human-like figures, and animals rich with symbolic meaning. Yet these artistic expressions are never signed. They are the anonymous creations of a people whose identity was rooted in the clan and the village. This social structure, built on kinship and likely guided by councils of elders, fostered remarkable cooperation, but it was not without its challenges. Researchers have found evidence of conflict in this period, with some settlements built in highly defensible locations, suggesting times of hardship or social tension. So why did they eventually leave their magnificent stone cities at places like Mesa Verde and the great ceremonial center of Choco Canyon? The prevailing theory points to a prolonged and severe drought that gripped the region in the late 13th century. This environmental stress, combined with possible resource depletion and social pressures, likely made these large population centers unsustainable. The people did not vanish. They migrated, moving south and east, and their cultural traditions, their knowledge, and their collective identity traveled with them. Their legacy lives on in the modern Pueblo tribes, who maintain deep cultural and spiritual connections to these ancestral sites. The story of the Ancestral Puebloans is a powerful lesson in resilience. It demonstrates that a civilization's most enduring legacy is not a list of kings, but the living memory of a people, carried forward through stories, ceremonies, and a continuous connection to the land. Deep in the humid jungles of the Mexican Gulf Coast, colossal stone heads stare out from a forgotten world. Carved from single blocks of basalt, some weighing over 20 tons, these monumental sculptures depict helmeted figures with stern, distinct features. Each head is a powerful portrait of an individual, a ruler who commanded the labor to move such a stone and the artistry to shape it. Yet, the name of every single one of these leaders has been utterly erased by time. This is the enduring mystery of the Olmec civilization. From roughly 1400 to 400 years before the Common Era, the Olmecs laid the foundation for all subsequent Mesoamerican cultures, earning them the title the Mother Culture. Their influence is like a deep, underground river, surfacing in the art, gods, and rituals of the Maya and the Aztecs who came millennia later. At their great centers like San Lorenzo and La Venta, they engineered their landscapes on a grand scale. They built massive earthen mounds and vast ceremonial plazas, reshaping the land itself to reflect their beliefs and social order. This was a society of clear hierarchy, where a powerful elite could command the resources and labor needed to transport basalt boulders from distant quarries, rafting them across rivers and hauling them overland without the use of the wheel. The colossal heads are the most visible symbol of this power, likely representing revered rulers or ancestors. But were they meant to glorify a specific named king, or to embody the enduring office of leadership itself? The question lingers because the Olmecs left us only fragments of their voice. They developed one of the earliest writing systems in the Americas, with a few symbols and glyphs found on stone slabs and portable artifacts like the beautifully carved jade celts they prized. But their script remains only partially understood, a whisper we cannot fully hear. We see evidence of their sophisticated calendar systems and their complex spiritual world, populated with jaguars and other supernatural beings that would echo through later mythologies. Yet the priests who interpreted these signs, the astronomers who tracked the cycles of Venus, remain as anonymous as the rulers in the stone. Their society, with its centralized authority and large-scale public works, draws a fascinating parallel to the mound-building cultures of North America. Both invested immense communal effort into reshaping the earth for ceremonial purposes, and both did so without leaving behind a single personal name to credit for the achievement. The Olmec legacy is a profound paradox. They created a cultural blueprint so powerful it defined a region for centuries, yet the master architects of that blueprint are known to us only by the artifacts they left behind. Their anonymity forces us to focus on their collective impact, the ideas that proved far more enduring than any individual's name. This pattern of a foundational yet nameless culture is not unique to the Americas, as we find a similar story waiting in the sands of the Sahara. Thousands of stone towers rise from the rugged terrain of Sardinia, silent sentinels of a people whose name is lost to us. We call them the Nuragic civilization, borrowing the title from their most enduring creation, the Nuragic. From around 1800 to 500 years before the Common Era, these Bronze Age builders transformed the island with an estimated 20,000 of these unique structures. The classic Nuragic is a masterpiece of dry stone construction, a beehive-shaped tower built without any mortar, its massive stones expertly fitted to stand for millennia. Some were simple, solitary towers, while others evolved into vast, complex fortresses with multiple interconnecting towers and defensive walls, forming the nuclei of entire settlements. The sheer scale of this building project speaks of a highly organized society, one capable of mobilizing labor and resources across generations for a purpose we can only interpret from the stones themselves. Were they defensive strongholds, the homes of chieftains, ceremonial centers, or perhaps all of these at once? The silent Nuragic offer no easy answer. Beyond the towers, the Nuragic people built sacred wells, intricate underground structures that channeled water from deep springs, suggesting a reverence for this vital resource that was central to their spiritual life. They also left behind megalithic tombs known as giants' tombs, communal resting places that again point to a society where collective identity overshadowed the individual. The artifacts found within these sites tell a story of a skilled and connected people. They were master metalworkers, casting exquisite bronze figurines of warriors, animals, and ships. These small sculptures are our closest window into their world, hinting at a social structure with a martial elite and a deep connection to the sea. Their pottery, often decorated with geometric and solar motifs, was traded across the Mediterranean, reaching as far as Cyprus and the Aegean. Yet, for all this material evidence, we know nothing of their language, their rulers, or the specific names of their gods. Their story is interpreted entirely through archaeology, supplemented by later, often biased, accounts from classical authors who saw them as a legendary people of pirates and shepherds. This lack of a first-hand voice means we see them through a distorted lens, their rich culture flattened into a simple caricature by outsiders. Their eventual fate is a common story in the ancient world. As Phoenician traders established coastal colonies and the power of Rome began to swell, the distinct Nuragic identity was gradually absorbed. They did not vanish in a dramatic collapse, but their unique traditions, their architectural styles, and their political independence slowly faded into the dominant cultures of the new era. Their assimilation highlights a poignant truth about history, that the voices of indigenous cultures are often the first to be silenced by the march of empires. The silent towers of Sardinia stand as a powerful monument to this loss, and a reminder that the Mediterranean cradle of civilization held many diverse cultures whose names we will never know. Deep within the forested islands of ancient Japan, a different kind of civilization was taking root, one defined not by grand monuments but by the art of everyday life. For an astonishing span of time, from around 14,000 to 300 years before the Common Era, the Jōmon people created a stable, sophisticated world without relying on farming or leaving behind a single named leader. Their name comes from the distinctive chord markings found on their pottery, a design created by pressing rope into wet clay. Yet this simple technique belies a culture of profound depth and resilience. They were not nomadic wanderers but lived in settled villages, their semi-subterranean pit dwellings arranged around central plazas, suggesting a strong sense of community and shared social space. Their survival was a masterful balance of hunting, fishing, and gathering, a deep, intimate knowledge of the seasonal riches offered by the forests and seas. This long-term stability, lasting for millennia, directly challenges our deepest assumptions, proving that cultural complexity does not require fields of grain or a ruling class whose names are carved in stone. The true genius of the Jōmon is found in their material culture, which speaks of a rich inner world. Their pottery vessels are not merely functional, they are works of art with elaborate, flame-like rims and intricate surface patterns. They crafted mysterious clay figurines known as dogu with large, hypnotic eyes and abstract bodies. These figures, often found broken in a pattern suggesting ritual, may have been used in healing ceremonies or to represent spiritual beings. They even developed some of the world's earliest lacquerware, using tree sap to create beautiful, waterproof containers. These objects point to a complex spiritual belief system and a society where skilled artisans held valued roles, all within a framework that remained steadfastly collective. The landscape itself holds clues to their communal mind. At sites like Oyu in northern Japan, they assembled large stone circles, carefully laid out in patterns that may have tracked the movements of the sun. These enclosures were likely centers for seasonal gatherings, ceremonies that brought people together to reaffirm social bonds and their connection to the cosmos. For thousands of years, the Jōmon way of life adapted to rising sea levels and shifting climates, a testament to their incredible flexibility and deep environmental wisdom. Their enduring success raises a powerful question. What does it mean to be a civilization if not to build empires and inscribe the names of kings? The Jōmon answer seems to be that civilization can be a quiet, persistent thread, woven from shared knowledge, artistic expression, and a harmonious relationship with the natural world. This long chapter finally began to close as new technologies and people arrived from the Asian mainland, bringing wet rice agriculture and metalworking in what is known as the Yayoi period. This was not a sudden collapse but a gradual transformation, a merging and shifting of populations and practices, yet the Jōmon legacy did not disappear. Their aesthetic sensibilities, their spiritual concepts, and perhaps even aspects of their social structure subtly infused the culture that would become Japan. Their story is a quiet but monumental testament to the fact that a civilization's most enduring impact is not always measured in deciphered names or conquered territories, but in the silent, persistent echo of a way of life lived in balance for thousands of years. The silence of the Peruvian desert is broken by the geometry of a forgotten city. At the site of Caral, 6 massive pyramidal structures rise from the arid Supe Valley, their forms echoing the surrounding mountains. This was the heart of the Caral-Supe Civilization, a society that pioneered urban life in the Americas while the Great Pyramids were being raised in Egypt. From roughly 3,000 to 1,800 years before the Common Era, these anonymous builders constructed a complex of monumental platform mounds, sunken circular plazas, and residential quarters, all without a single weapon, a single piece of pottery, or a single written word to tell us their names. Their architecture itself is their language. The main temple, a towering earthen pyramid, was designed with a stunning acoustic feature. A person standing at the top, speaking in a normal tone, can be heard with perfect clarity in the plaza far below. This was not an accident, but acoustic engineering designed to unite a community in shared ceremony. The entire city was a carefully orchestrated landscape for gathering, for ritual, and for a social life built on cooperation rather than conflict. Archaeologists have found no defensive walls, no stores of weapons, and no art depicting warfare. This profound absence suggests a society that thrived for over a millennium without the shadow of organized violence, a rare and remarkable achievement in the ancient world. So how did they sustain their urban experiment? Their economy was a masterful symbiosis of land and sea. Inland, they cultivated crops like squash, beans, and most importantly, cotton. This cotton was spun into the nets used by coastal communities to harvest the rich bounty of the Pacific Ocean. In return, those coastal fishermen provided vast quantities of anchovies and sardines, which were dried and transported inland to feed the population at Caral. This intricate trade network, moving cotton for fish, bound distant communities together in a web of mutual dependence, all managed without a written contract or a named king to enforce it. Their legacy is written not on clay tablets but in the very seeds, fish bones, and discarded shells found in their refuse heaps. The Caral-Supe Civilization eventually faded, its grand plazas slowly reclaimed by the desert sands. Yet their influence did not disappear. The architectural themes they pioneered, the platform mound and the sunken circular court, became foundational elements for the great Andean civilizations that followed, from the Chavin to the Moche. Their story forces a profound reconsideration of the origins of cities. It demonstrates that urbanism and social complexity could blossom from a foundation of trade, ceremony, and collective labor, a powerful, peaceful alternative to the narrative of civilization born from conquest and kingly decree. A vast settlement sprawled across the plains of ancient Romania, its concentric rings of houses home to thousands. Yet this was not a city ruled by a king, but a community of Neolithic farmers known as the Cucuteni-Trypillia Culture. From roughly 5,500 to 2,750 years before the Common Era, they built some of the largest settlements on Earth, some covering areas larger than the famed cities of Mesopotamia that existed at the same time. Their world was one of planned neighborhoods and densely packed homes, a testament to a society that organized itself on a grand scale without leaving behind a single name for its architects or leaders. The most haunting mystery of this culture is not how they lived, but how they chose to leave. Every 60 to 80 years, evidence suggests they intentionally set their entire settlements ablaze. The charred remains created a remarkable time capsule, preserving detailed impressions of their wattle and daub walls and the layouts of their homes in fired clay. Why would a people deliberately burn down their own community? Researchers propose this was not an act of destruction, but one of profound ritual. It may have been a ceremonial renewal, a way of cleansing the site for a new generation, or a final, fiery tribute to a cycle of life that had reached its completion. This practice offers a glimpse into a world where the community itself was a living entity, periodically reborn from its own ashes. Their material culture speaks of a people with a rich symbolic life. They created exquisite pottery, its surfaces painted with elegant spirals and dynamic animal motifs. These designs were more than simple decoration. They were a visual language, a reflection of a sophisticated belief system connected to the cycles of nature. Yet this language gives no names for gods or goddesses, no boasts of royal lineage. The absence of palatial homes or richly furnished individual graves points to a remarkably egalitarian social structure. Power appears to have been shared, with decisions made collectively rather than handed down from a chieftain or priestly class. They achieved this urban scale living through cooperation, not coercion. After more than 2 millennia of flourishing, their culture began to fade. A shifting climate toward drier conditions may have stressed their agricultural base, while migrations of new peoples from the steppes likely introduced different social dynamics. The Cucuteni-Trypillia culture did not so much collapse as it was gradually woven into the fabric of other emerging societies, its unique traditions blending and transforming. Their legacy is a powerful challenge to our assumptions. They demonstrated that large, complex settlements could be built and rebuilt for centuries without the need for kings, conquests, or carved inscriptions. Their story is written in layers of ash and painted clay, a silent testament to the enduring power of the collective. Massive blocks of coralline limestone form silent, sun-warmed courtyards on the islands of Malta. These are the oldest free-standing stone structures on our planet, raised by a people whose name and language have completely dissolved into time. From roughly 3,600 to 2,500 years before the Common Era, this temple-building culture achieved a feat of engineering and communal will that predates even Stonehenge and the Egyptian pyramids. Their complexes, like the awe-inspiring Jewith above Gantaja, meaning giantess, were assembled from stones so large that later generations believed only giants could have moved them. The architecture is not random pile, but a sophisticated arrangement of apses or curved chambers, leading off a central corridor. They engineered corbelled roofs, where each successive layer of stone slightly overlaps the one below, gradually closing the space overhead to create a soaring, vaulted effect. Within these chambers, you find altars and libation holes, suggesting rituals that may have connected the community to the earth, the seasons, or the memory of their ancestors. The entire design reveals a society where spiritual life was the central pillar of existence, a force powerful enough to unite people for over 1,000 years of continuous building and refinement. How did they manage such precision with only stone tools and sheer human effort? The soft Globigerina limestone used for the interiors was carefully quarried and then shaped with stone and obsidian implements, a painstaking process that speaks of immense dedication. The temples were also precisely aligned with celestial events. At Najdra, for example, the rising sun on the equinoxes slices through the main doorway to illuminate the central axis of the lower temple, a clear indication that these people were not just builders, but keen observers of the cosmos. The artifacts left behind offer tantalizing yet silent clues about their beliefs. Rounded, full-figured statues, often called fat ladies, have been discovered in these sacred spaces. These figures, with their emphasis on fertility and abundance, may represent powerful mother goddesses or venerated ancestral spirits. Their artistic world was also filled with spiral motifs, carvings that coil inward and outward, perhaps symbolizing the eternal cycles of life, death, and rebirth. Yet, for all these physical traces, we have no deciphered writing, no king lists, no names for the priests or priestesses who presided here. Their identity is entirely bound to the stone. Then, around 2,500 years before the Common Era, this vibrant and distinct culture simply vanished. The great temple building ceased. The islands appear to have been largely abandoned for a time before being resettled by a new people with a completely different material culture, one that used metal and built dolmens rather than temples. What could have caused such a complete and sudden end? Researchers suggest that a combination of factors may have led to their decline. Centuries of intensive farming and deforestation could have exhausted the fragile island soil. A prolonged period of drought may have stressed their resources beyond recovery. Without the ability to simply move to new lands, this isolated island society may have faced challenges that their once successful way of life could no longer overcome. The silent temples of Malta stand as a profound monument to this mystery. They represent a society that channeled its greatest collective efforts not into palaces for kings or tombs for pharaohs, but into houses for their gods and their community's spirit. Their story is a powerful echo of a theme we have seen across the globe, that the human need to create meaning and build for the sacred can be a force as monumental as any empire, even when every individual name is forgotten. A farmer's simple discovery in 1986 unearthed a treasure that would rewrite history. While digging a clay pit in Sichuan province, his shovel struck not just earth, but a hidden chamber filled with objects of breathtaking strangeness. This was the first glimpse of Sanxingdui, a civilization so unexpected it seemed to belong to another world. For centuries, the story of early China was told from the banks of the Yellow River, centered on the sophisticated Shang dynasty with its ornate bronze vessels and oracle bone script. Sanxingdui, flourishing from roughly 1700 to 1200 years before the Common Era, presented a radical alternative. Here was a society of equal technological brilliance, yet one that expressed its genius in a completely different visual language. They were masters of bronze, but they did not cast cauldrons for ritual feasts. They created a gallery of the surreal. From the sacrificial pits emerged towering, slender human figures with elongated arms and hands clenched in a perpetual gesture. There were masks with bulging, tubular eyes and enormous, wing-like ears, faces that seemed to peer into a spiritual realm invisible to ordinary people. One mask alone stands over 4 feet wide, a colossal visage that could never be worn by a living person. These were not portraits of kings, but perhaps representations of gods or deified ancestors, their forms intended to inspire awe and transcend the human scale. The sheer volume of treasure is staggering, with elephant tusks by the hundreds and golden scepters of unparalleled workmanship buried with deliberate care. Why would a culture so advanced choose to inter its most sacred and valuable objects in a series of carefully arranged pits, systematically covering them with earth? The leading theory suggests these were not tombs but ritual offerings, a way of communing with powerful forces through an act of profound, deliberate sacrifice. The entire wealth of a spiritual tradition may have been given back to the earth or to the gods in a single, monumental ceremony. The silence surrounding this act is absolute. Unlike the Shang, who left behind thousands of inscribed bones detailing their questions to the spirit world, the Sanxingdui people left no deciphered writing. We have their voice, but we cannot understand their words. Their script, if it even was a full writing system, remains a series of isolated symbols we cannot read. This technological prowess makes their sudden disappearance all the more perplexing. Around 1200 years before the Common Era, their vibrant culture vanished from the archaeological record. Their city was abandoned, and the practice of creating their distinctive art ceased. There is no evidence of invasion or catastrophic destruction. Instead, researchers propose that a massive earthquake or a dramatic shift in the course of the local river may have rendered their homeland unlivable, forcing a large-scale migration. The people of Sanxingdui likely did not vanish but moved, carrying their knowledge and traditions with them. Some scholars see a direct line of cultural influence connecting them to the later Shu state, a kingdom remembered in later Chinese histories for its own unique and mystical character. The legacy of Sanxingdui is a powerful corrective to a singular historical narrative. It proves that Chinese civilization was not a single flame kindled along the Yellow River, but a constellation of brilliant, independent fires burning across a vast landscape. Their anonymous artistry forces us to expand our map of the past, to make room for the stunning diversity of cultures that rose, created, and faded away, leaving behind only the magnificent, silent evidence of their genius. A farmer's hoe strikes something hard in the red earth of central Nigeria, unearthing not a rock, but the serene, time-worn face of a terracotta head. This was the moment of discovery for the Nok culture, a people whose name we borrow from a modern village, for their true identity is one of history's quietest secrets. From roughly 1,500 years before the Common Era to 500 years into it, these West African artists forged a society of both fire and clay. They mastered the technology of iron smelting, a skill that requires immense heat and specialized knowledge, while simultaneously creating some of the most sophisticated and naturalistic sculptures the ancient world ever produced. Their terracotta figures, often life-sized heads with piercing eyes, detailed lips, and elaborate, ornate hairstyles, speak of a people deeply concerned with individual expression and social identity. Yet the individuals these portraits represent, the rulers, the priests, or the revered ancestors, are completely anonymous. We see their faces, but we can never know their names. This artistic brilliance was supported by a foundation of technological innovation. The Nok were among the earliest sub-Saharan Africans to produce iron, a development that revolutionized their society. With more efficient iron tools, they could clear dense forest for farmland, supporting settled village life and a more reliable food supply. This agricultural stability, in turn, allowed for social specialization. Not everyone needed to farm, freeing some individuals to dedicate themselves to the demanding, sacred craft of sculpture. The creation of a single terracotta figure was a multi-step process, from gathering the right clay to the careful pit firing that hardened it. The survival of these fragile clay objects for over 2,000 years is a testament to their skill and the dry savanna soil that preserved them. Without a single written word, the meaning behind these powerful sculptures remains a profound mystery. Were they portraits of actual community members created for ancestral shrines? Did they represent deities in a spiritual world we can no longer access? Scholars rely on stylistic analysis, noting the common features and comparing them to the artistic traditions of later West African kingdoms like Ife and Benin, which also produced magnificent naturalistic art. This connection suggests that the Nok's cultural influence did not simply vanish, but flowed like an underground river, resurfacing in new forms centuries later. The end of their distinct culture around 500 years into the Common Era is not well understood, with shifts in trade patterns or environmental changes being possible factors. Yet their disappearance as a defined archaeological culture does not mean their people vanished. They likely became the ancestors of the many communities that later flourished in the region. The legacy of the Nok is a powerful reminder that the human drive for artistic expression is universal, flourishing with or without the need for personal fame. Their story challenges a narrow view of global history, placing West Africa firmly on the map of early technological and artistic innovation. They achieved mastery in both the practical science of metal and the expressive power of art, all while their collective identity remained their most valued possession, a name written not on parchment but in the very earth they shaped. Gold and turquoise glint in a dark chamber, adorning a figure seated for eternity. We call him the Lord of Sipán, a name we invented for a man whose true name we will never know. His tomb, discovered in the coastal valleys of Peru, offers one of the most vivid portraits of a Moche ruler, a civilization that flourished from around 100 to 700 years of the Common Era. The Moche built immense adobe pyramids like the Huacas del Sol and de la Luna, which served as the political and spiritual heart of their world. They were master artisans, producing breathtaking gold headdresses, intricate ear spools, and ceramic vessels painted with scenes of such detail that they feel like pages from an unreadable book. These fine-line pots illustrate everything from mythological stories to scenes of fishing, weaving, and ritual combat. Yet, for all this vivid depiction, the society left no written language. The rulers who wore these golden regalia, the priests who conducted the elaborate ceremonies shown on the pottery, and the artists who captured it all remain anonymous figures in a silent drama. The political landscape of the Moche appears to have been a network of powerful regional valleys, each potentially governed by its own elite lineage. The incredible wealth found in burials like Sipán, with its retainers and symbolic objects for the afterlife, points to a society with a clear and steep social hierarchy. These were not anonymous builders in the collective sense of the Hopewell, but individuals who held immense personal power and were buried with treasures to proclaim their status for eternity. And yet that proclamation is mute. We identify them only by the artifacts surrounding them, giving them modern nicknames like the Old Lord of Sipán or the Priestess of San Jose de Moro. Their actual names, their personal histories, the words they spoke, and the language they used have evaporated from time. Their identity is entirely archaeological, reconstructed from the context of their graves rather than from any chronicle they left behind. This creates a fascinating paradox. Here was a culture that clearly celebrated individual authority and achievement through its art and burial practices, yet that very celebration failed to preserve the one thing that would make those individuals unique to us, their names. Their legacy is one of action and role, not of personhood. We see the office of the warrior priest, but not the man who held it. We see the ceremony of the ritual battle, but not the specific victor. This demonstrates a profound truth about the fragility of memory. Without a written system to anchor personal identity to specific deeds, even the most powerful and vividly depicted leaders can fade into the archetypes they represented. The end of the Moche world seems to have been written not in battle, but in climate. Researchers suggest that a prolonged period of intense droughts, followed by catastrophic rainfall and flooding linked to El Niño events, severely disrupted their sophisticated irrigation-based agriculture. The Huacas were slowly buried by desert sands, and the complex social order that built them unraveled. From this foundation, however, new cultures like the Chimu would later rise, building upon the Moche's architectural and artistic innovations. The silent lords of the valley remind us that the absence of a name does not mean an absence of influence. Their power resonates through the centuries, not in a spoken name, but in the enduring weight of gold and the silent stories painted on clay. A warrior king stands in his tomb, clad in gold and bronze, his face turned toward eternity. We have no idea what his people called him. Across the rugged landscapes of ancient southeastern Europe, the Thracians forged a culture defined by both martial spirit and breathtaking artistry. From the Bronze Age well into the Roman era, these tribes were legendary to their Greek neighbors for their skill in battle and their almost mystical connection to their horses. Yet their own stories, their own heroes, remain a profound silence, known to us almost entirely through the accounts of others and the treasures they buried with their honored dead. Their society was a tapestry of powerful clans, each likely led by a chieftain whose name is lost to the very earth that holds his remains. A few Thracian rulers, like the fierce King Tyrs or his son Sitalces, are noted in Greek histories for their military campaigns, but these are fleeting glimpses through a foreign lens. For every named king, there are countless anonymous leaders whose power and prestige are attested only by the magnificent gold and silver objects placed in their burial mounds. The sheer opulence of these tombs is staggering. The Varna gold treasure, dating back to the Copper Age, includes some of the oldest worked gold ever discovered, while the later Panegyrish treasure features ritual drinking vessels of pure gold, crafted with a skill that rivals anything from the classical world. These were not mere decorations, they were symbols of status, power, and a deep, complex spiritual life. The Thracians are believed to have engaged in ecstatic rituals similar to the Greek worship of Dionysus, ceremonies that sought a powerful connection to the divine through dance and celebration. This vibrant, passionate culture, however, never developed a widespread written tradition of its own. Their history was recorded in metal, not on parchment. This reliance on material wealth and oral tradition, while creating an incredible archaeological legacy, left their collective voice incredibly vulnerable. As the power of Rome expanded, the Thracian world was gradually absorbed into the empire. Their distinct identity did not vanish in a violent conquest, but slowly faded through a process of cultural blending. Thracian gods were merged with Roman deities, their languages were supplanted by Latin, and their unique practices were woven into the broader fabric of the imperial tapestry. They became Romans, and in doing so, the specific memory of their kings and their clans dissolved. The Thracian case is a powerful lesson in the fragility of memory. Here was a people renowned for their wealth and their warriors, whose material legacy is nothing short of spectacular. Yet without their own written records, their history is a story told by others. Their heroes are anonymous figures in splendid armor. Their silence reminds us that a civilization's voice can be lost not through a lack of achievement, but through the absence of its own written word. A single, inverted bell-shaped cup sits in a grave, its form echoing across thousands of miles and hundreds of years. This distinctive pottery defines the bell beaker phenomenon, a cultural horizon that swept through Europe from roughly 2,800 to 1,800 years before the Common Era. From the sun-baked coasts of Iberia to the misty highlands of the British Isles, people were buried with these characteristic drinking vessels, alongside archery equipment and the first metal daggers of the early Bronze Age. But who were these individuals? We have their finely crafted goods, but not a single name for any of the warriors or leaders laid to rest with such care. The bell beaker culture presents one of archaeology's most enduring puzzles. Was this a massive migration of people, or simply the rapid spread of a powerful new set of ideas? For a long time, the evidence seemed to point toward a mobile, warlike society, with the bow and arrow as a central symbol of status and identity. The widespread distribution of identical artifact styles suggested a network of connected communities, perhaps even a single people on the move. Then, recent genetic studies added a stunning new layer to the mystery. Analysis of ancient DNA from beaker burials revealed that in Britain, for example, the arrival of the bell beaker complex coincided with a dramatic genetic shift, replacing nearly 90% of the existing population within a few centuries. This suggests that in some regions it was indeed a movement of people, not just pots and ideas. Yet in other parts of Europe, the story is different, showing a blending of new arrivals with local populations. This creates a complex picture where both migration and cultural diffusion played intertwined roles. A single beaker grave might contain a person of local ancestry buried with a new, fashionable bell beaker and a copper dagger, showing how quickly and deeply these ideas were adopted. Their society was likely organized into small, mobile clans, with leadership based on martial skill and personal prestige rather than a fixed, kingly hierarchy. The anonymity of these individuals is absolute. We see the warrior by his bow, the woman with her finely decorated wrist guard, but we cannot know their personal stories or the names of their chieftains. Their identity is entirely defined by the material culture they shared, a collective signature written in clay, metal, and stone. They did not build in a vacuum. They interacted with the existing megalith building traditions of Western Europe, often reusing and respecting ancient stone circles and burial chambers. This interaction, this fusion of new and old, was crucial in shaping the societies that would emerge in the European Bronze Age. The bell beaker phenomenon ultimately faded, its distinct artifacts slowly evolving into more regional styles, but its impact was permanent. It helped spread metallurgy, new social structures, and a connectedness that laid the groundwork for the world that would follow. Their silent, continent-spanning network shows us that anonymity can operate on a vast scale, where a shared set of objects and customs can weave together countless unknown lives into a single, enduring historical mystery. The horizon was an empty blue, a void of terrifying possibility. Yet the Lapita people set their prows toward it, navigating an ocean larger than any continent with nothing but the stars, the waves, and a profound knowledge passed down through generations. From roughly 1600 to 500 years before the Common Era, these master mariners performed one of humanity's most daring feats, discovering and colonizing the scattered islands of the remote Pacific. Their world was the sea, and their legacy is written not on parchment but in the clay at the water's edge. At their coastal settlements, they built stilt houses perched over tranquil lagoons, their reflections shimmering in the water below. These villages speak of a life intimately tied to the ocean's bounty, a launching point for journeys into the unknown. The most telling artifact they left behind is their pottery, fragments of which are found across thousands of miles. Each vessel was more than a container, it was a canvas. Before the clay hardened, they pressed small toothed stamps into the surface, creating intricate geometric patterns of lines, circles, and faces. This dentate stamped pottery is their signature, a consistent artistic language that connected communities from the islands near New Guinea all the way to Samoa. Finding a shard of this pottery on a distant shore is like finding a fingerprint. It confirms that a specific people with a shared culture and technology had arrived. This was not a random drift but a deliberate, sustained voyage of discovery. Their double-hulled canoes were their cathedrals and their castles, vessels capable of carrying entire families, their plants, their animals, and their hopes for a new land. They traveled against prevailing winds on purpose, a sophisticated strategy ensuring they could sail back home if they found nothing. How did they navigate such featureless expanses? They read the subtle patterns of swells reflected off distant islands. They tracked the flight paths of seabirds, and they memorized the precise rising and setting points of stars. This was a science of memory and observation, a living library carried in the mind of every skilled navigator. The social world that enabled these journeys remains partly hidden. The distribution of their distinctive pottery suggests a network of connected communities, bound by trade and kinship. Shells, obsidian, and other valuables moved across this vast web, sustaining social ties over incredible distances. Yet the chief who organized an expedition, the master navigator who guided the canoe, and the artisan who carved the stamps for their pottery are all anonymous. Their identities were woven into the success of the voyage and the survival of the community. Later Polynesian oral traditions would speak of great heroes like Cupe and Hawaii Loa, but these stories were written on the wind long after the Lapita voyages had ended. The names of the original pioneers are silent. Their diaspora gradually slowed as they reached the eastern edges of their known world, the islands of Fiji, Tonga, and Samoa. Here, the distinct Lapita pottery tradition faded, evolving into new cultural forms. The people did not vanish, they became the Polynesians we know from history. The Lapita legacy is the very peopling of the Pacific. Their anonymous courage laid the foundation for the named kingdoms of Hawaii, the named chiefs of New Zealand, and the vibrant cultures that would later arise. They prove that a civilization's greatest journey can be one of collective memory, where the name of the explorer matters less than the new world they bequeath to their children. A dense, ancient mound rises from the Balkan soil, a layered history of a people who lived and worked here for over 1,000 years. This is a Vincha tell, the accumulated residue of a Neolithic society that achieved a startling level of sophistication without ever giving us their names. From roughly 5,700 to 4,500 years before the Common Era, these early farmers established settlements across southeastern Europe, their lives built on the cultivation of wheat and the domestication of animals like cattle and pigs. Their world was one of stability and growth, marked by advanced pottery fired in kilns to a lustrous black finish and decorated with elegant, incised patterns. They mastered the smelting of copper, becoming some of Europe's very first metalworkers, evidence of long-distance trade for materials like obsidian and spondylus shell reveals a network of connections stretching across the continent. Their society showed clear signs of social differentiation, with some homes larger and richer in artifacts than others, hinting at emerging hierarchies. Yet from this complex tapestry, not a single personal identity emerges. The most tantalizing clue to their inner world comes from small, flat clay artifacts. On these tablets and figurines, we find an array of symbols, carefully inscribed marks that look hauntingly like a form of writing. There are linear signs, crosses, and chevrons, a repertoire of abstract expression that appears too structured to be mere decoration. This is where a great scholarly debate takes root. Are these Vinci symbols the remnants of an early, undeciphered script, a proto-writing system used for accounting or ritual purposes? Or are they simply powerful ritual signs, a symbolic language of ownership or belief that never evolved to record spoken language? Without a bilingual text, a Rosetta Stone for this culture, the symbols remain a locked door. We can see the keyhole, but we cannot turn the key. This presents a fascinating historical near miss. The Vinci culture possessed many of the preconditions we associate with literacy: complex economy, social stratification, and long-distance communication. They stood on the very threshold of recorded history, yet they never quite crossed it. Their intellectual achievements, their stories, and their personal names were never committed to a durable medium we can now understand. Their potential was ultimately absorbed as their culture faded, their distinctive traits blending into the incoming waves of new peoples. The silent symbols of the Vinci pose a profound question about the nature of legacy. How many other societies approached this same threshold, their collective wisdom and individual experiences hovering on the edge of being remembered, only to recede back into the silence of the anonymous past? Their story reminds us that the line between a named civilization and a nameless one can be as fine as a mark in wet clay, waiting millennia for a reader who may never come. Their world was one of ice and long winter darkness, a landscape where survival itself was a monumental achievement. For 2,000 years, the Dorset culture thrived across the vast, frozen expanse of the Arctic, mastering an environment that would challenge most other humans. They built their homes partly underground, using stone and sod to create shelters that conserved precious warmth against the relentless cold. Their entire way of life was a brilliant adaptation to the ice. They were masters of the seal hunt, crafting ingenious tiny tools from bone, ivory, and antler. These were not crude implements, but finely worked harpoon heads and delicate needles, each piece a testament to a deep, specialized knowledge passed down through generations without a single written word. Their artistic vision offers a rare glimpse into their inner world. They carved small, haunting figures from soapstone and ivory, depicting polar bears and enigmatic human forms with long, slender bodies. Many of these carvings have a spiritual weight to them, suggesting a rich shamanistic tradition where humans and animals were deeply connected in a universe alive with spirit. Yet the carver of each piece, the shaman who interpreted the visions, and the hunter who braved the ice are known to us only as the Dorset, a name given by archaeologists. Their own name for themselves is a silence buried deep in the frozen ground. Their remarkable stability over 2 millennia makes their eventual disappearance all the more poignant. Around the 14th century, the climate began to shift, a period often called the medieval warm period. This warming trend likely altered the sea ice patterns that were so crucial to their hunting strategies. At the same time, a new people, the Thule culture, ancestral to the modern Inuit, began to expand eastward from Alaska. The Thule possessed different technologies, including larger boats and more powerful bows, which may have given them an advantage in the changing environment. The Dorset, so perfectly adapted to a specific, icy world, found themselves facing new competition and a transformed homeland. Did the two cultures meet? Inuit oral histories passed down for centuries speak of a people they called the Tuniat, described as strong and gentle giants who preceded them. These stories are the closest we come to a historical record of the Dorset, a ghost of a memory preserved by their successors. The Dorset did not vanish in a single cataclysm, but their distinct culture gradually faded, their settlements were abandoned, and their unique way of life was absorbed or replaced. Their story is a powerful lesson in the double-edged sword of specialization. A culture can achieve breathtaking harmony with its environment, forging an identity that is both resilient and unique, yet that very success can make it vulnerable when the world suddenly changes. The Dorset legacy is not one of fallen kings or conquered cities, but of quiet resilience, a 2,000-year testament to human ingenuity that ultimately returned to the silence from which it came. Golden masks gleam in the desert sun, their polished surfaces reflecting a world of power and belief. In the arid valleys of northern Peru, the Sipán culture forged a legacy of breathtaking artistry after the Moche era faded. From roughly 750 to 1375 of the Common Era, these master metalworkers and farmers built a society of immense sophistication, yet its rulers remain forever hidden behind the masks they wore. Their capital city, known today as Sipán, was dominated by massive adobe pyramids called huacas. These towering structures were the heart of Sipán life, centers of ceremony and administration that cast long shadows over the surrounding plains. The true measure of their civilization, however, lies not in the scale of their architecture, but in the brilliance of their craft. They perfected a technique of gold and silver alloying, creating objects of stunning beauty and symbolic power. Their most iconic image is the Sipán deity, a figure often depicted with upturned, wing-like eyes and a fierce expression, found repeated on crowns, beakers, and ceremonial knives. This being, likely a central figure in their spiritual world, appears everywhere, a unifying symbol for a people who left no written creed. The tombs of the elite reveal a society with a steep social hierarchy. Leaders were buried in deep shafts, surrounded by retinues of retainers and a fortune in grave goods. They were laid to rest with ornate masks, golden gloves, and headdresses that transformed the wearer into a divine representation. Yet for all this personalized splendor, we have no names for the individuals who wore these treasures. We know their roles, their status, and their beliefs, but their personal identities are sealed within the metal they so cherished. Their success was rooted in the earth. They engineered extensive irrigation canals, channeling water from distant rivers to transform the dry valleys into productive farmland. This agricultural surplus supported not only a ruling class but also the specialized artisans whose skills became the hallmark of Sipán culture. Their influence stretched along the coast, a network connected by shared religious iconography and economic exchange. This vibrant world, however, eventually met its end not through environmental collapse but through conquest. The expanding Chimu Empire, with its powerful army and centralized state, absorbed the Sipán territories. The Chimu valued Sipán metallurgical skill highly, incorporating their artisans and artistic traditions into their own imperial workshops. The Sipán people did not vanish, but their political independence and distinct cultural identity were woven into the fabric of a larger empire. Later, the Inca would tell their own stories about the origins of these coastal peoples, but these are myths filtered through a conqueror's lens. The silence surrounding the Sipán is a profound reminder. Even in a region with exceptional archaeological preservation, where gold and textiles survive for centuries in the dry soil, the absence of a deciphered writing system creates an impenetrable veil. We can reconstruct their technology, their social structure, and their economy with remarkable detail, but the sound of their language, the names of their kings, and the specific stories of their triumphs and defeats are lost. Their legacy is a powerful testament to the limits of material culture and the enduring mystery of the human story when written only in objects, not in words. These silent cultures, separated by oceans and millennia, speak to us in a common language of collective effort. Whether raising mounds in the Mississippi Valley or hauling sarsen stones on the Salisbury Plain, their grandest projects were almost always communal. The scale of these earthworks and megaliths required not a dictator's command, but a shared vision powerful enough to coordinate generations of labor. This pattern points to a world where identity was woven into the fabric of the group, the clan, or the spiritual tradition, leaving little room for the individual boasts of kings. Another thread connecting them is their profound relationship with the cosmos. From the solstice alignments at Mnajdra to the acoustic precision of Caral, these societies embedded their understanding of celestial cycles into the very bones of their architecture. Their monuments were not just buildings, they were grand calendars and sacred spaces, anchoring the community to the rhythms of nature and the universe. This shared focus suggests that for many anonymous cultures, the most important stories were not about human conquests, but about humanity's place within a much larger order. Why did this happen again and again? The absence of deciphered writing is an obvious factor, but it is not the whole story. In some cases, like the Indus Valley, a society may have developed complex administration without feeling the need to immortalize individual rulers. In others, cultural values actively prioritize the community. The Jōmon sustained a sophisticated way of life for over 10,000 years without any evidence of a ruling class, their identity expressed through shared artistic traditions and ritual practices. The political anthropologist James C. Scott offers a compelling perspective on this phenomenon. He suggests that many early societies may have actively resisted the formation of states and the record-keeping that came with them. For them, anonymity was a form of freedom, a way to avoid the taxes, conscription, and social control of a centralized hierarchy. They chose a collective existence to maintain their autonomy. The enduring legacy of these nameless civilizations is far from empty. Their influence echoes in the technologies they pioneered, from the lapita navigation techniques that unlocked the Pacific to the knock mastery of iron smelting that transformed West Africa. Their artistic styles, like the swirling motifs of the Hopewell or the fine line pottery of the Moche, became the foundational grammar for later cultures. Even their genetic heritage lives on in the descendants who still inhabit their ancestral lands. Recognizing these patterns allows us to see anonymity not as a historical failure, but as a different, equally valid mode of human existence. It challenges our modern obsession with individual fame and asks us to consider the quiet power of the collective. What do these enigmas ultimately teach us? They reveal the stunning diversity of human social organization and remind us that a civilization's true impact is not always measured in the names of its rulers, but in the enduring echoes of its shared achievements. The silent echoes of these lost names leave us with a profound understanding of human history. It is a story far richer than just the chronicles of kings and the dates of battles, woven just as deeply from the threads of collective endeavor and quiet adaptation. From the mound builders of the Mississippi to the potters of ancient Japan, these societies achieved staggering complexity not for personal glory but for their communities. They channeled their genius into shared ritual, technological innovation, and a harmonious relationship with their world. Their anonymity in the archaeological record is not a mark of insignificance but an invitation. It asks us to look past the cult of the individual and to appreciate the powerful, underlying currents of cultural development that have shaped our species. These civilizations teach enduring lessons about resilience in the face of environmental change, about creativity expressed through communal art, and about the countless ways humans have found to thrive together. Let this journey inspire you to see the hidden histories in the landscapes around you, to sense the anonymous hands that built the first mounds and charted the unknown seas. Their legacy is a quiet reminder that our shared human story is written not only in grand names, but in the enduring strength of the collective. We would love to hear which of these enigmatic civilizations resonates most with you. Share your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe for more journeys into the deep mysteries of our past. Thank you for exploring these silent histories.